We've chased one rabbit, and we've wanted to be the best at that. And that's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about a narrow strategy, a narrow forward, right? There's this expanded view, and then there's a narrow focus. And that's kind of where we're at and what we're going to talk about. So as you grow, number one, it has to be intentional. And we've already said it, right? Growth is the only guarantee for a better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Change is going to happen, whether you like it or you don't. But growth is going to be guided change, right? And growth takes strategy, planning, and a focused effort. So when we say our number one aspect of how to grow, how to put my growth plan together, you start with the intention behind it. What am I focusing in on? So, yeah.
Well, when you think about intentionality, and you just talked about our gut protocol, David, that takes intentionality. Anyone that's on a fitness journey or a growth journey, lifting weights, whatever that journey is, it takes intentionality. It takes prep. It takes making sure that you've got the right foods in the house. So you're not going to go for the chips and salsa versus the kale, right? The kale.
Thanks a lot for the kale in the fridge. Yeah.
So, but it does. You've got to be intentional, because he talks about intentional choices, right? We have, how many choices in your day are intentional, right? And think about that. That really, shifted my perspective. How intentional are you in conversations that you're having with some of your teammates? How intentional are you in the conversations that you're having with your children or with your spouse or with your parents? Intentionality is a big part of growth.
Yeah, where am I going? How am I going to get there, right? And you can look at this. There's two kind of segments that you're going to look to grow in. Yeah, and one of them may be like your soft skill that's needed for you to become that expert. A soft skill may be your attitude or your belief system or your perspective. Like you said, Lindsey, the perspective is what's changed the way that we looked at that vehicle that was taken out of our garage, right? It was all perspective. That is a soft skill. You can look at growing those hard skills, like Lindsey's talking about with our fitness. A hard skill may be what I said, speaking, right? Public speaking. That would be a hard skill. Career advancement. We're in direct sales. So when you look to get better at sales, you look to grow your relationship ability. How do you build a better relationship? How to win friends and influence people. Dale Carnegie's been teaching this stuff for going on close to 100 years at this point. So narrow the focus for what you're wanting to, where you're wanting to go, and that's going to dictate the how I'm going to get there. But it's not just going to happen, right? So that's step one, is being intentional about that. The second piece that we talked about was being practical. And, you put a good spin on that. I broke it down into a different category of being aware, but then also staying curious. So when you think about a good growth plan, step one is it's intentional. Step two is that it's going to be aware and it's going to be curious, right? And you can categorize that as being practical. And that's something you spoke to. You put it real simply.
I think knowing yourself, when you know yourself, right, you can grow yourself. So if you don't know, hey, my strengths or my limitations, right? One of my strengths is relationship building. I'm strong in that. I continue to grow in that. One of my limitations is organization. That is not a strength of mine. So that is something that I've got to put a few small things in place. I'm never going to be an expert at that, right? And I know that. That's not an indictment. It's just who I am. But I have put a few small things that does help get better. So when you're trying to be practical, don't pile. So we as humans try to pile too many things on at once, right? I'm going to work out. I'm going to make 35 sales calls in an hour, and I'm going to do this. And you just pile your plate, and I'm going to coach the little league team, and I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to start a blog, and I'm going to be an influencer. And then we pile all these things on. And then you get to day 2 and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. It's just way too much. And we've all been guilty of it. So I think just being practical in your season of life that you're in right now, what is practical for you to be able to accomplish at the end of the week or at the end of the day? What can you accomplish?
And it's really making that next step, right? Like I've heard it put where if you were to ask me, and me in particular, if you were to ask me 3 years ago, if I was ready and I was equipped to being a man challenge table leader at our church here, I said, absolutely not. Not a chance. But if you would have asked me if I can show up, right, I can take that next step to, I'm going to start attending Man Challenge, and I'm going to start getting myself up earlier than is comfortable. And I'm going to do that uncomfortable thing of showing up to this group that is growing themselves and say, you know what, I might not want to, but I can. I'm going to do that. And that's part of it, right? So number 1 is, like you said, awareness. You got to know thyself to grow thyself. Number 2 is being curious. And some people will put that as the beginner's mindset. It's that ability to stay humble. It's that ability to know that you're not perfect. It's the ability to know that there is a bigger and better you out there if you would just put a little bit more time and effort into growing and chasing that. You can get better, right? And good leadership, good people come from a curious mindset.